maybe as people are joining, they can let us know who they are and where they're logging in from and what they're hoping to gain from the conversation. Welcome everyone to our Catalyzing Change Week session today on upskilling for systemic change, tools for inclusive and circular business models. So moving from linear to circular business models is essential to meet the 2030 SDGs, but how do we do it? Upskilling on circular strategies is the first step to help businesses design out waste, increase efficiencies, and keep resources in use. But circular models should not only have environmental impact, but also include a just transition along the value chains to benefit both people and planet. So today's session will dive deep into the topic with our speakers that you see here on the panel to get to know more about these circular and inclusive business models. So you have the chance to ask questions in the chat throughout the session. We do allow about 10 or 15 minutes at the end to open the floor to the audience. And also have your phones or your laptop ready because we do want to make it interactive and we have a few Mentimeters to get your feedback as we're going. The session is being recorded, and just a reminder to keep yourselves on mute as we're going through the session. So from here, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Ambrose to take us through the next few slides.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you everyone for joining us for today's session. I think as Julie has introduced, we're trying to look at how do we go about building inclusive business models that are going to guarantee us a green future, and how do our businesses play a role in helping us to be the change that we are looking for in our communities. So my name is Ambrose Mbuvi, a social business consultant with Yunus Environment Hub, and I'm based in Nairobi. And as an organization, our vision is curated within what we call the curating the world of 3 zeros. So we work more within SDGs that are geared towards zero poverty, zero unemployment, and zero net carbon emissions. And how we try to do this is by working with social businesses and social innovators to design and implement business solutions and business models that are working towards solving the environmental and social challenges that they are facing within their communities and also within their local value chains. Yeah, I think we are motivated by our founder, Professor Mohamed Yunus, who has been championing the whole framework of social businesses throughout the world. And we are elated to be part and parcel of the Yunus family. So speaking to a bit of our solutions, so we work in 4 key thematic areas. Number 1 is around incubation and acceleration programs. This is where we target social entrepreneurs, and we focus on helping to curate solutions for environmental challenges. Number 2 is around venture building, where we come together with like-minded organizations and like-minded companies to be able to test and replicate some of the research work that we've been doing to be able to develop and scale up some of the innovations. Number 3 is around consultancy and advisory, where we work with governments and developmental institutions to be able to carry out research work around some of the key thematic areas that are work that is geared towards identifying what solutions can be tested within the different ecosystems. And then finally is around education and training. As we all understand, we all need to be able to be in a position where we are able to educate those we come in contact with and those we work with on the importance of adopting circular business models and inclusive business models. And this is where we also come in to ensure that we facilitate this knowledge transfer so that it's not knowledge that is only left to those of us who are within the ecosystem. Yeah. So I think maybe before I proceed, I think we have a little exercise that will be we'll be going through, and this will be the start of our session today. So back to you, Julie.
Give me 1 second. I'm just going to put a short Mentimeter in the chat. You can use your phone or your laptop to go ahead and just let us know what is your knowledge of the just transition. So if you don't understand or you haven't heard of it before, just write that you don't know. And if you have, then let us know what your thoughts are on that topic. And as your words pop up, we will see them in a word cloud on the screen. There's no right or wrong answer. Okay, so we have equity, fair transition from linear to circular, inclusive. Some people don't know, so that's good. It means you'll get extra learning out of the day. All right. Great, so let's go into the topic so we can have more insights onto the just transitions. Let me go back to the slides. And I will pass it back over to Ambrose.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Julia. And thank you everyone for also sharing your perspective and getting to share with us what you understand by the term just transition. Maybe I think before I jump to this topic, I'll be highlighting two key concepts that we believe are very integral in helping us to be able to curate the future that we are looking for and to be able to guide the adoption of inclusive business models. So I'll be speaking around the just transition framework, and also speaking around the circular economy framework. To start with the just transition, and we can define this in a very different ways, but it will all come down to speaking towards how do we facilitate transition to a green economy, and do this in a manner that will be fair and will be as inclusive as possible to all the people that are affected and that are concerned. And how do we achieve this in a way that we are creating decent work opportunities for the local communities, and also ensuring that even the marginalized populations, the marginalized communities are part and parcel of this endeavor. So you will realize this involves very much looking at in our operations and in our different models within our value chains. How do we pursue the vision and the goal that we have towards the greening of the economy? And how do we do this while speaking to the three key pillars of just transition, which are creating very sustainable industrial policies that will lead to creating very sustainable labor policies, and also adjusting the labor policies that exist. And also, most importantly, how do we have very strong social support programs that are geared to addressing any inequalities that exist within the ecosystem and that are a threat to the transition to a green economy. So I think it's also good to mention, currently as an organization, we are finalizing a report on just transition. And this is work that we've been doing together with the GIZ, and it's using the ILO framework and the ILO definitions of just transition as the foundation of frameworks. And I think within the course of this month or late next month, we'll also be able to share with you the kind of work and the report that we've been doing through this framework. But to cover two key highlights, maybe to go into the next slide, be able to speak to why should you think of just transition as an organization or as a business? Why should you pay attention to this? And this, from our perspective, just transition speaks to 4 very key areas that each and every organization always has to think about when it comes to bringing the vision you have into life. And these 4 key elements are around, number 1, when it comes to the growth or economic growth of your organization. Working towards just transition presents your business with a very good opportunity to pursue even and equitable economic growth, and also ensure social equity within your value chain. Ensure that you foster fairness and inclusivity throughout your value chain. Number 3, it's around the work that we are trying to do to address the effects of climate change. How do we become very good stewards of the environment and the environmental resources that have been bestowed upon ourselves? And the concept of just transition and adopting just transition policies and frameworks will help us as an organization to also be able to become positive stewards of the environmental resources that have been bestowed upon us. And finally is around, in our own small way, contributing to the overall global objective of addressing the issues of climate change and of ensuring that as a globe, we move away from the catastrophes that we are currently facing and help transition towards a sustainable global existence. And with this, we all have a role to play. And so these are just the foundational areas of how just transition, or how you can view just transition as an opportunity for you and the organization. The concept of just transition can be primed around 10 different principles. I'll not go into each of the principles, but this is just a build up to what we have discussed in the previous 2 slides. And I think later after this, we'll be sharing the slides with you. Then you'll be able to see how you can use this to also be able to advance your vision. But key important thing that I can mention is 2 key principles that are speaking towards the regulatory framework or regulatory environment, and also the monitoring and evaluation aspects of adopting a just transition framework. I think due to the effects of climate change that we are facing currently, and due to the realization that we all have to come together to pursue or to change our way of doing business, governments and many institutions now have developed frameworks and regulatory guidance for institutions and organizations, and on how to adopt some of these principles in our journey to circularize what we are doing.
It's complicated. And
working towards adopting just transition principles will also help you to be able to adhere to some of these developments that are coming up. And as I transition now to the next phase of circular economy. So from our side as Yunus Environment Hub, one of the key questions we have been working towards in the past 2 or so years is, how do we bring together the concepts of just transition and circular economy in a manner that we use them to address the world's biggest problems and challenges? And this is where we have what we are calling the CirculaRise course, where we are blending in the these two frameworks to be able to come up with a very practical and realistic manner of developing inclusive business models and helping practitioners within the circular economy space to guide and to nurture the transition from linear to circular economy. And so this is an expert training course that is geared towards helping participants to understand how to build and implement circular economy strategies in a manner that is speaking to the just transition principles. And it's primed on our work in the past 2 years with social businesses and entrepreneurs across the globe, having done a pilot in Kenya, then we did also in Germany and also in some of the Asian countries. And we used our experience and lessons from these interactions with the businesses to be able to curate a practical course that we think would be a guidance to how do you help implement inclusive business models, or how do you guide the transition to a circular economy? Next slide. Yeah, so I think on your screen, yes, thanks. So these are just a few of the results that we realized in the past 2 years from the work that we've been doing and from the testing that we've been doing. I'll not dive into the numbers. I think we'll be able to share the slides a bit later, but the only key thing I'll mention is the potential that this has when it comes to driving equity and fairness within the communities. One of the key things that came out strongly was how, through the adoption of circular economy models and frameworks, how it contributed to the creation of green jobs, but most importantly, to the addressing the gender gap, especially which is at a higher level, speaking for some markets or some economies, for example, in Kenya, and how this program provided an opportunity to address such a gap. So I think we'll now be jumping into the nitty-gritties of the course and what it has to offer. But I think before we jump into that, I'll allow Julie to share another Mentimeter so that we can also have an understanding of where we are starting from.
Exactly, thank you. So go back to the same link that you had before, and you should see a new question, which is, let me share my screen. What skills do you think are needed to enable circular business strategies? Because again, today we're talking about upskilling and what do we need to actually make, what skills are needed to make these business models a reality and scalable. Are you able to access the Mentimeter with the link from before? Should be the same link. And if not, you can put it in the chat as well if that's easier. All right, now we're getting some responses. Okay, so what skills? Because that's the next area that we're going to go into, the skills that we think are needed to enable or to build these circular business strategies. Either for new budding entrepreneurs or for people who have existing businesses that need to transition their models from linear to circular. Adaptability, flexibility, critical thinking, resilience, drive. Out of the box thinking. Creative technology, agility, collaborative. Great, this is fantastic, thank you. You can continue to put your thoughts in the in the word cloud, and I can take, I can add this to also to the slides that we can share after. So let me stop sharing here. Appreciate this feedback. Still coming in. And let's go back into the slide deck. We have, give me 1 second here. All right. And we'll go for a few more slides before we dive into a panel discussion with our 2 founders that are in the call today here as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Julie, for that. And thank you for everyone who has shared their input on what skills they think one needs to possess to be able to guide the adoption or the transition to inclusive business strategies. And so I think achieving this, or the question then becomes, how do we utilize these skills to be able to design inclusive or business models or strategies that are addressing or that are helping us to achieve the 3 key principles of circular economy. And these key principles are around designing out waste when we are coming up with our products or offering our services. Number 2 is keeping our products and materials in use for as long as possible in increasing their life cycle. And number 3 is how do we regenerate our natural systems? I think currently, or for the longest time, as a globe or as a society, we have always relied on what we call the linear economy. And ideally, this is where the thinking has always been picking the raw materials, going forward and manufacturing or coming up with our products and services. Then anything that we have not utilized, we consider it as waste within our value chain. But while this model has carried us for that while, then it has also come with some of the effects that we are facing as a human, as the human population in today's world. And this is where the thinking around circular economy comes in. And in essence, this is geared towards how, as we coming up with our products, how do we design our products in a manner that we have the idea of recycling, the idea of refurbishing, the idea of remanufacturing in mind. As we are designing them out, how do we design them in a manner that as much as possible we minimize or we do away with the waste, and design the product in a manner that it can feed into another value chain as a resource or as a raw material. And so it does not have, at the end of its life cycle, it's not necessarily waste, but it's a resource into another value chain. And how do we also prolong the life cycle, or how do we ensure that the product we have designed will be able to exist for a long while? And to be able to achieve these 3 basic concepts, there are different models that are the foundational level of designing an inclusive business model. I will not go into defining or talking about each and every of them, but basically we talk around designing models around circular supply chains. We talk around how to design a product as a service. So I don't have to own the product, but I only pay for using the product. We speak around product life extension. We speak about sharing and leasing models, the likes of Airbnbs, the likes of Ubers. We speak about resource recovery and recycling. This happens a lot within the downstream elements of the plastic value chain. And so this is where we start building the inclusive business model. Within these 5 business models, then this is where we pick from and then be able to identify which model works best for our business. Then from there, now we go ahead and work on the building blocks of the strategy. And this is where now the concept of circular economy and the concept of just transition come together when we start working on the building blocks. And as we are working on the building blocks, there are a few key questions that we always consider. And this goes towards number one, understanding our personnel in terms of what's the skill set that they possess. Do we need to do reskilling? Do we need to do upskilling? And how do we go about building a pipeline that understands the journey that we are trying to walk? Number two is around equity and fairness. How do we ensure fairness and equity within our value chain from the start to the end? And of course, how do we speak to the environmental, economic, and social metrics? Which kind of metrics do we want to track as an organization? How do we plan to track them, and how do we plan to measure them? Yeah, and so all this is geared towards supporting the integration of the environmental and social and economic sustainability of your organization. And this will help towards, as much as possible, bringing your organization to becoming a circular business. And you might be asking the question, why do we all need to pay attention to transitioning to a circular business? And there are different elements to it, and there are different reasons as to why each and every one of us can choose to pursue this. And these are not limited to aspects around compliance or aspects around our care for the environment and our care for the globe and the environmental challenges that we are facing, and our brand visibility and our brand reputation. There are many more areas as to why, as a business, we need to pay a keen attention towards the transition. I think so. In the next 2 to 5 minutes, as I finalize, allow me now to speak to how do we achieve all this? How does all this come together in the CirculaRise course that I mentioned a little bit earlier? So the CirculaRise course, as I mentioned, is an expert level training targeted to practitioners and business people or individuals within the circular economy space, and who are looking to work on innovations that are geared towards achieving or transitioning to circular inclusive business models. It's 5-week course where every week we cover a module. So it's primed in 5 modules, where we start with a refresher around the principles around just transition and circular economy. Then we carry out an ecosystem mapping, where you get to do a deeper diagnostics of your value chain to be able to understand what are the gaps and what are the weaknesses. Then we jump towards a conversation around the different innovations that exist for circular and social impact. Then we use these to work on developing an inclusive circular business strategy for your organization, for your entity, or a framework that will guide you to develop such a strategy. And finally, we work towards how do you measure your impact? How do you measure your social and circular impact? What kind of dimensions and what kind of impact measurement framework do you pursue as an organization? The delivery of the course is quite experiential and quite practical, a mix of self-paced and live sessions, fully online, where we have live sessions twice a week on Zoom, and then you are able to do some self-paced learning and self-paced activities on an e-learning platform. Will be guided by a team of trainers who have been working in our program as coaches and as advisors of implementing inclusive business models. So there's a lot of industry-based experience and industry-based learning, and also the kind of worksheets and the kind of case studies that we use in the course are based on live examples of businesses that are actually implementing their solutions within their local ecosystems And to add on to that, also life challenges that they are facing that you'll be able to discuss and be able to engage your mind into how better do we guide the transition to a circular economy. So thank you very much. And that would bring it to a close from my side. Back to you, Julie.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ambrose. So I just mentioned that the next course is starting on the 28th of May. We pushed it back and I saw that I didn't update the slides, so sorry about that. There's more information in the QR code. I'll put the link also on the website here and in the chat here in just a minute. But let's go into the next part of the session. So I'm going to stop sharing the slides and let's meet our two social business founders that are here with us today. So we have Charlotte from Germany and Josh from Kenya, who in the next 20 minutes or so will be able to share their experience building their inclusive circular business models. So just give me 1 second here and I will let them both introduce themselves. Okay, so let's start with Josh. Josh took part of our CirculaRise Accelerator in Kenya, which was Ambrose had mentioned before, where we launched our accelerator about 1.5 years ago. So Josh, can you tell us about Rafiki Pay and how your business model contributes to a circular economy while also supporting local communities? And give a brief introduction for yourself, and you're on mute right now. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Julie and everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Joshua Iponga. I'm the founder and the CEO of Rafiki Pay Limited. At Rafiki Pay Limited, we are supporting smallholder farmers by offering them several services and also providing them the market for their goods. So first of all, we provide them with agronomical support on regenerative agriculture. And mostly we focus with oil crops, that is sunflower, canola, and soybeans. So these are crops that are mostly used to in intercrop changing that is rotation cropping. And once we get these produce from the farmers, we take them to a factory. With farmers, we practice what we call contractual farming. So once we take our crops we get the produce from farmers, we take them to a factory, and once we process the oil, we use we have developed digital dispensing machines that helps our low-income earners to access our premium products affordably. And that is where we apply the principles of CA, circular economy. That is the using of plastics. And we have a model where once the customer has visited our ATMs or digital dispensing machines, they go with their plastic, and they are given a certain discount. And the reason we came up to this point is to encourage the reuse of plastics and to reduce the pollution these plastics are causing to our globe. Remember, plastics are among the 10% pollutants of in our ecosystem. So that's what we do at Rafiki Pay. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, now over to Charlotte, who participated in our program in Germany and also had a very exciting week with a new launch that you can also tell us about. But first, I think if you can give the audience more information about the company, about Loda Ludwigsen, and your inclusive circular business strategy, and how does your business impact both people and planet?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. Exactly. So I built up Loda Ludwigsen, a circular and fair fashion brand here in Berlin. And our idea is to create clothes that never turn into waste, basically. So what does it mean? It means that we design clothes for the biological cycle of a circular economy, so that in the future, at one point, that all our clothes could safely biodegrade instead of ending as textile waste somewhere. Because currently it's like every second, one truck of textiles end up as waste. And many of them end up illegal somewhere, for example, in the Atacama Desert right now. So there are piles of textile waste that will end up and stay there for the next 200 years because it's mostly plastic or like polyester or like a mix of polyester and natural fibers. So currently they cannot be recycled once they are mixed fibers. So yeah, it's so shocking how much waste we create with textiles. And that's the idea, to design it differently, to apply circular thinking, circular design strategies, so that all our clothes can endlessly be kept in the cycle, first in the technical cycle. So you could recycle it, you could use it, reuse it, you could rent it out. But at one point in time, if it cannot be repaired anymore, for example, the products, then they could just decompose in nature and go back as a resource for nature or the soil again. And yeah, so we apply the circular design strategies, such as the cradle-to-cradle design philosophy, but also to design not for trends, not for seasons, but yeah, for in our case, a suit for a lifetime. So we focused on business attire for women, because a suit is one of the hardest and most complex garments you can make. And we wanted to showcase that if we can make a suit 100% circular and fair, then we can do it with any kind of garment. And besides all these circular ideas, obviously we also have a fair production in a small female-run facility in Poland. We know all the manufacturers. We develop our own fabrics, our own components, like the first 100% compostable shoulder pads. We focus a lot of transparency in terms of who are our suppliers, so supply chain transparency, material transparency, but even price transparency. So we really show our customers how we calculate prices, so that they understand how much money and costs there are to create clothes, so that we all value the clothes more that we are wearing. Yeah, and also for every product we sell, we support social projects as well. Currently, we are supporting Sparsa. This is a project in Nepal that fosters menstrual hygiene and the production of circular menstruation pads, so that girls and women can take part in the society, in their daily lives, even during their menstruation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So great. So we had two great examples of circular business models, and both developed and in the scaling phase, right, with the challenges that those involve. So the audience here, I think, is quite broad. I don't know if they're all kind of coming from startups or they're coming from the business world. But I think, how do you get to the point where you're at is important to understand. I think if people want to develop their own business or their solution, or to also make those changes within their own organization. So how do I become more circular? Where can I make those improvements? And how can I ensure that it's done in a way that's just and inclusive? So going back to Josh, what role has training and capacity building helped you at Rafiki Pay to scale your impact? And where do you think more training and support is needed to help drive more inclusive circular solutions?
Thank you, Julie. First, CirculaRise program was a very good program for us. It really impacted us. We are able to measure our impact. We worked through the journey with our coach, and we were really able to measure our impact we are creating from the farm level to our distribution and marketing, where in the entire value chain, there is a lengthy application of the circular and the circular economy. So the BBB, or the formerly BBB, really help us to be able to come up with a model to our financial record keeping. We are able to pitch, and through the pitching, we are able to raise a lot of money for our company and also for our circular economy projects. So it really impacted us in a very, very big. And I think there's much still need to be done, especially on training on the carbon credits, and because these are some of the emerging opportunities that I think the social enterprises and the entrepreneurs who are in this space, they can tap the opportunities that are in the carbon credit trading. So I think there's more support that is and training that need to be directed in that space, because I think these opportunities are they are marrying each other. So I think there is still much more need to be done in terms of support and training. Thank you.
Okay. Anything in specific around the training, any particular areas that you see?
Not really. Everything was very perfect. Actually, we were demanding and requesting that we be handed more time. We couldn't believe that the training really ended that fast, because it was really very beneficial.
So trainings in general so people need time to be able to upskill, I guess would be the conclusion there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So going back to Charlotte, can you tell us about the inspiration behind Lotte Ludvigsen, and what steps did you take to gain the skills to design and launch a circular business?
Sure. Yeah, so the inspiration was basically to create clothes that are aesthetic and sustainable at the same time. And back then, it was really that I saw an interview with a woman working at the United Nations, and she really, like, her job was basically to come up with regulations to prevent child labor. And while she was giving the interview, she was wearing a suit from a fast fashion brand. I don't say the brand, but or like the brand is known for child labor. So I thought, this is crazy. Like, this woman is doing the best she can fighting these problems, but in the end, she cannot even wear her values. She cannot even wear what she stands for. And it goes, against her beliefs. And it's not her fault. It's the thing that there are no alternatives on the market. So in the end, I thought, okay, we need to create clothes that enable women to wear their values. So that was the inspiration. And back then, I think most of my skills I acquired through my master program in Copenhagen. I studied innovation and entrepreneurship. And there it's all about how to solve problems through entrepreneurial thinking, and to come up with entrepreneurial ideas. And once I learned everything about design thinking and how to apply also circular thinking, I realized, okay, I need a problem first, in order to apply all these things and to come up with an idea. And if you're looking for problems, obviously you cannot go past the textile industry. I think Macron once said it's the one and only industry that combines all problems that we have in this world, from child labor, über chemicals, über corruption, waste, and so on. So name a problem and the textile industry has it. So this is how I found my way into the textile industry. And from there, I try to take on all the skills and program and courses that exist to get familiar with the industry. Also through jobs and internships back there, or like academic work. And then once I started Lotte Ludwigsson to bring it all together, I think it was very helpful to go through the CirculaRise program for sure, but also other incubation programs. So we also went through the Impact Hub Circular Together program. We were part of an innovation program by Project Together about circular innovations. So all these things, all the support that is around there really, really helped us to develop our skills even further.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, and I think when people had put in information earlier around the circular economy and they mentioned collaboration, I think it's also really important to build that network and to collaborate, to make those connections, right? Because it's really hard to start a business and to do things on your own. So definitely an important aspect as well. And maybe also as we're talking, or maybe as each of you are kind of not talking, if you can also put your websites in the chat so people can also get to know more about your businesses and where to find you, I think that would be helpful as well. So I have one last question for both of the panelists, and then we will definitely open the floor to the audience to ask any questions that you might have. But the same question for both of you. So let's imagine that our audience is now ready to take action and get started to implement a new circular inclusive business or a change within their current organization. So what would be one piece of advice that you would give them to get started? It's a tough question. So maybe Josh, do you want to take it first?
I think Charlo can go.
Okay, I start. I think what we already touched upon, that you should surround yourself with other people that are impact driven, that want to create something, that are proactive, that are change makers, both within an existing company or like in an entrepreneurial way. Because I think, first of all, change doesn't happen overnight. So it's a long, long process, and it can be very tough and resilient, and it can be lonely. So I think, surround yourself with people that have a similar mindset to support each other, and obviously also stay resilient, because I think this is one of the hardest things. It's a long process, and you need to know why you're doing it. And this kind of community of change makers will help you to stay on board.
Fantastic, thank you. Josh? I think we might have lost Josh for a second. Here he comes back. All right, Josh. No worries, we got you back.
I think my advice would be, I would advise everyone to start.
But you're a little bit, sorry, but you're a little bit hard to hear now. Maybe you can adjust the microphone a bit slightly.
Can you hear me now?
Now it's better. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My advice would be, let's start now. I would advise anyone, I would advise our audience, let's everyone start now. As Charlotte has said, change doesn't happen overnight. That's true. But I would advise people to do the research, so that, because as we transition and upskill, it's not that it's not that easy. It has some challenges, but the results are so inspiring and the impact is enormous. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, so are there any questions for the audience? I saw that there was one around Cradle to Cradle that was answered in the chat, but are there any questions that you want on the broader topics or specifically for Charlotte or for Josh? I'll put their websites. This is the Rafiki Pay website, and we'll put the Little Livingston website in here as well. So you have more information about the two businesses. Any questions that you have that I might have missed, that might have been in the chat that I didn't see? One new message, let's see. Not quite, I understand. Is there a curricular for skill building? I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Maybe Nima, you can elaborate a bit on the question there. And maybe while she's doing that, maybe Josh and Charlotte, you can think about like, where do you think the biggest gap is right now in capacity building? Like what needs to happen to enable businesses to take the steps? So if we want people to act now, like where are their gaps, do you think, or what kind of skills might need more emphasis in some of the training programs that you've been in? Because I think both of you have been in several different training programs. Something to think about, but let's go back to the, maybe you can put some responses in the chat as well, but there's a specific question to Charlotte from the chat. Says, can you tell us what specific impact measurement tools you use to measure circularity?
Yeah, so currently we don't have a proper circularity measurement implemented, but we helped a big global consultancy company to create one that so that they come up with a circularity assessment that other companies can now use. For us, it's really like the lifetime of a garment, the percentage of plastics, or in our case, zero plastic, the CO2 emissions that are used, but also like the distance within the supply chain. For example, for us, it's a lot of like in fabrics made in Austria, colored, dyed, washed, and so on. It's all in Austria. So we have lots of things in Germany, Austria, and Poland. So this would be an impact measurement to see how close our supply chain is. Yeah, then obviously the percentage of waste created, which in our case would be also zero. If we would just put it in nature, it would be gone. Things like this. Yeah, I hope that helped.
Josh, do you want to answer maybe the same question around impact measurement?
I think with impact measurement, we have been deploying some tools from external organizations that are helping us to measure the impact. So, because whatever we get is as a lot of clarity and transparency. So when we are reporting our impact, it's more clear. On the other question you raised, Julie, is on the gap that exists on the companies that might be trying to go the circular, the circular way. I think there exist some gaps because from the interaction I have with several companies that are trying to enter into the space, is there is gap on the information. There is still more to be done on the availability of more information and deeper information, detailed information on how to start on and how to fully be apply these strategies to sustainability. I think that is where the gap exists.
Okay, thank you. No, and I think it's important around the impact, because if you build a circular solution and aren't able to actually report on the metrics or understand the impact that you've had, it's hard to kind of connect it all together. So I think that the impact metrics is an important area. And again, it doesn't need to be something that you do on your own. You can outsource it as well, like in the case of Charlotte, to experts who are already, that's their area of expertise. And I think that that's a fantastic way to do it as well. But I think it's very important that businesses are able to understand the need and to understand where it is that they want to make an impact. And again, environmental, social, economic, like what are those impact areas that you need also for the investors to be able to see that your businesses, if they invest in you, the impact that you have is then scalable and replicable and will grow. So I think it's definitely important. And that was something that we worked along a lot around with the pitch event that we had in Nairobi, was to be able to have proof points to show if you're looking for investment, right, that they need to have those validations there. So I think we're about at time. I think we have 1 minute left. I don't know from the Catalyst group if there's anything that you want to share to close out the session today. Maybe you can share where you're going to be hosting